Great day, everybody. Welcome to another incredible episode of the Gale Show. I'm Matthew Britt, coming at you from Ontario, Canada. Grateful to be here. I love what we get to do every day. And as always, my good friend and business partner, Gale. Good to see you too, buddy. How are you?
I'm going to say something that I've never said before on a show or really anytime in the last couple of years. I'm exhausted. And I'm glad we have Dr. Kevin G on the line with us today because he might be able to give me some tips. I just checked. My wife said, let me check your blood pressure. I was 159/80, which is a little bit high. And I got this pressure right here in my third eye. And it's a very interesting feeling because I'm normally just 100% like freaking go, 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 go. And the last couple of weeks with my mom's brain tumor and all these different things happening, and I feel super alive and thankful and happy and present, but I'm also exhausted with high blood pressure. So what the frick is going on, Dr. Kevin G?
Well, you're feeling it is what the simple answer is. And where it's showing up in your body is a clue. And from that expression here and probably a couple other spots, it's going to be able to unfold a story that is not just based on today's stressors, but it's based on things for the future, things for the past, what you're seeing out in the world, what you're noticing within, all these dimensions of what it is to be a human. But it's collecting right here.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're talking today because I've found lately that there's no coincidences in the world. It's all cooperative incidences. Everything that's happening is happening for us. And Matthew said this not too long ago, not to us, right? So you mentioned a couple spots. Interestingly enough, I have in my groin, right between like my testicles and my sphincter, I have an interesting kind of hot feeling. And I've got this feeling here, and it's those two places that when I meditate, my attention is gravitating to those two places of all things. I have no idea why, but here we are.
Well, there's a very simple explanation, and it's found within traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture and the nature of the human body. If we would look at the human body like the Matrix movie could, in fact, there's a great artist. His name is Alex Gray. And he depicts the human body as these layers of energetic highways. And in the different studies from Western medical science and physiology and anatomy to the Eastern, South American, every continent has its own unique way of looking and working with the body indigenously. And now in the new understanding, adding all this technology and understanding of anatomy, blah, blah, blah. But this energetic highway. And what you're talking about is essentially either end of the battery. Okay. There's a very important pole point here. Energetically, it aligns with called the central and the governing vessel of the meridian system. It's right down the middle, like a zipper down to the jacket. And it's akin, but it's like a mirror of the central nervous system. And so there's certain points that relate to certain states of consciousness where tension can build, or stress can add, or there's numerous factors from physical, biochemical, electromagnetic to emotional and states of belief. All these things are what it is to be human plays out in the energies and the waveforms of what it is as we are energy, but we're also physical matter.
Wow. Gosh, I'm excited to dive into this because I'm totally in alignment with all of that. I mean, we are energy that somehow has coalesced through divinity, through spirit to be in this physical form, right? And so when you said two ends of the battery, man, something that was profound, right? And my positive and negative charge, somehow there's maybe and yesterday I actually took the day and the only things I ate were things that I grew at Galt's Landing. So the mulberries and the tomatoes and the papaya and a bunch of the spinaches. That's all I ate yesterday to kind of cleanse a little bit. And I was actually with Tim James yesterday And what's the name of his platform, Matthew?
Chemical Free Body.
Chemical Free Body. So
Yeah.
he was playing music for us, and it was just a freaking beautiful thing. And I've just noticed this energy. So there's something there that I've got to find or just allow to pass through that somehow will kind of connect the energy flow again, I'm guessing.
Well, yes, agreed. Yeah, I want to expand the conversation and then I want to bring it to a physical, practical application we can do right here, right now.
Awesome.
Okay. So there's some brain, we're going to do some like thinking hat conversation for a brief moment. So prepare everybody for yourselves. And we're going to take ourselves back to biology class, basic anatomy class. Okay. We have sperm meets egg, comes together. We now can see a flash of light happens in that moment when we have the right technology looking at it. But then, so this half and a half comes together to make a whole. And then that grows for a period of time and does its thing automatically for a period of time. And then it splits in half. And then in half again, and then half again, and half again. And we replicate till we get these first stages of what it is to be a physical matter that is now operating in its own accord with the support of the environment around it. And then we get the first line. It's called this notochord. I forget the language. It's a line of nerve tissue, a lot of cells that the first thing that buds is the heart. So we get the electrical system and then the conductor of electrical system.
Wow.
And then everything builds from there. It's the kidneys next, and then parts of the brain. And so it's electromagnetic with this physical structure that's atomic, the carbons and the oxygens and the hydrogens and the atomic chart, the basic one from young days.
Yeah.
They keep finding new things and they keep expanding new things because we create things. That's what humans do. We create.
Yeah.
So here we are, though, foundational science. But now let's just zoom out a little bit. We got muscles, we got bones, we got ligaments, we got tendons, we got the brain tissue, the central nervous, the spinal cord.
Fascia.
The fascia. Now we're talking. The myofascia, the interstitial stuff. These all have to work together and balance each other. Otherwise, we're just a pool of tissue on the ground in a blob.
Yeah.
But we have this standing structure. And these structures are living and they're interworking, intercommunicating. Yet some are pushing one way, some are pushing the other way. There's an internal resistance and an external resistance to our body and how it works. There's a activation and a relaxation, a stress response and a relaxation response. So there's these two components all the time, the left brain and the right brain, the up and the down, the negative charges and the positive charges.
Wow.
And so when we're feeling things, it's part of a specific system of the human body. And the feelings are connected to the hormones. The hormone system is the feeling system. So when we feel things, it connects to the hormones that get released and are part of a communication network in the bloodstream.
Yeah.
That the nervous system's communicating to do and release and respond to based on the environmental signals and what you've learned.
Wow.
So don't touch the hot stove. It hurts.
Yeah.
But maybe I don't like to cook when I'm 40 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just don't like being near the stove. Oh yeah. Remember that story when you were 2 years old and you burned your hand? Oh yeah, that's right. So we have these conditioned experiences that we build responses based on our previous life experiences and what we've seen and learned and been around. Our nurture component of life. We have our nature and our nurture.
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to our physical pain, our physical symptoms, or our better stated awarenesses, sensations. Part of my work I find with my clients is decoupling. I'll say it this way: being okay with being emotional.
Yeah.
Because emotions are part of the human experience. But emotions come with feelings and sensations, and that's a language unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tied to the subconscious, the part that's hidden. It's a part of the automaticness of life. Our heart beats, our liver does its thing, our kidney does its thing. I want to keep it very broad and general, there's many people that dive into the expertise of everything, but every system of that nature does it by itself. You sweat by yourself. You can regulate your breathing, but it automatically happens at a certain point. So these sensations, there's a language, and it's kind of mystical because it's metaphor. It's allegorical. It's the quantum part of life. It's the infinite part of life. So there's lots of different ways of interpreting, seeing it, and having it play out, and levels of understanding. Just like a movie you watch or a book you read over and over again, or when it comes to growing food, and it's the repetition of being out there and enjoyment. And then you start to wire in these wonderful habits and experiences because you feel good doing it. Yeah. You wire good experiences in. That's kind of the nature of how to heal is, you want to know the problem and start getting to it. But you also start pouring the goodness in.
Yeah.
And that's emotional. It's chemistry. It's toxins getting out. It's finding simple ways. It's movement. It's breath. It's all these things. And they all come down to a topic of love at the end of the day, is a conversation of love and what that is in one's life, and how does one do that, and what is that? Dissecting, love may be, I'm going to drink water instead of soda today.
Wow.
Because we know when we look all that sugar up and what that does to the body, oh, you know what? I might taste good, but I'm going to do the right thing for me in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. The right thing, big picture in mind instead of this exact. So what I'm getting in my heart and soul when I'm listening and learning is that I am having an emotional response to all of the things that are happening in life. The top of my mind is my mom's brain tumor, and then getting her here and that whole process. And by the way, I want to share, my mom has an incredible group of friends that are supporting her right now, because I had to come back to Florida to do a series of incredibly amazing things, including, and this is a story we're sharing, a woman named Melanie came to Galt's on Sunday to film for a documentary that she's been working on for 14 years. The documentary is about her mother's brain tumor of glioblastoma. And we made the schedule for her to come. By the way, the documentary was done. McKinley, our partner, Hadley, said you should open up the documentary, the edit, and you should have the final scene be at Galt's Landing, because it's paradise and it's an inspired future, a vision of an inspired future. And she said, okay, I'm going to do it, after a lot of back and forth. Between the time that we scheduled the meeting and the filming and the time when it actually happened, my mom was found out to have the exact same thing that killed Melanie's mom. And Melanie's doctor friend, Dr. Brzezinski, is the world's leading expert in naturally curing this exact thing. Wow.
Yeah.
So, and I've recognized my response to it as being present and loving, not fearful, because I don't believe in fear has really any value in our world. Yeah, it's kind of the tool of the wicked. But anyway, so when you're saying that, I'm guessing that it is an emotional response that I'm having, but it's manifested in my body in ways that are different than I realized until now.
Well, sometimes I want to take out the conversation of emotion for a minute. It's as if when we look at something, we have a definition of it.
Yeah.
I look at that thing hanging on the wall. I'm going to call that a poster or a frame.
Yeah.
So we have these definitions that go wired back to when we were in the womb. We were 1 year old, 2 years old. It's the conversation of the brain waves and how we learn. And the best example is Pavlov and Pavlov's dog. So here we are at the end of the day. Pavlov, the doctor, was training the dog, or checking to see if you did one thing with another thing, did it cause the dog to salivate? So he rang the bell and brought food out. And it did that over and over and over again to wire these events together. And then he wanted to test if he could elicit a behavior in this case, salivation from a dog, to by the action of ringing a bell. So then he could essentially turn on the dog to salivate just by ringing the bell.
Yeah.
All right. So bring it to today. It's how many people have felt or heard the ringing of their phone and the phone didn't ring, or it's in their pocket. You felt a buzz and it didn't buzz.
Yeah.
There's something inside you that maybe wanted to connect with somebody or wanted to have a ring or wanted. So it's like you just felt that. It's like this wired together behavior. And so we get these cravings, we get these things, we get these beliefs, we get these patterns. So nonetheless, there's this how the brain works and wires together. Two things we do together get wired together. When we fire together, we wire together. We fire together, we wire together. Repetition.
Yeah.
All right. But that's for good things and for bad things. For things that we are aware of, things that we are unaware of. Right. So whatever this is, Jim, when we're talking about this story with your mom and the thing going on here is there's different levels of this scenario that your mind is taking in. Number one, it's your mom. It's just what is the definition of a mom? And we have lots of definitions of that in the world.
Yeah.
And each of them come with different connections of emotion.
Yeah.
And so whether you're consciously aware of it or not, there's things running just like a duck on the pond. That's the engine's churning on the ground.
Yeah.
Under the water, under the surface of the water. So that just means, because I've learned a little bit about you, you do a lot of big things, and our mind is frequently calculating, all day calculating these events that are going on in our environment and making choices based on the things we've learned.
Yeah.
But sometimes the pattern changes, just like nature throws a different storm or a different temperature pattern, or as a cycle. Maybe there's a period of 10 years, 11 years, a period of feast, a period of famine, where there's rises and falls in a grander scale than we're used to. Cycles, just like this is, I start getting into nature because we are nature. And when we look at nature, it's got the perfect example for everything within our own body, within our own life, within politics, within communicating with our neighbors. The answer's there. And that's ultimately the study that's been going on in my life since I was in my teens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I've looked at the patterns in my life, and I seem to have a 10-year ebb and flow, a 10-year pattern. And it's been consistent every decade of my life. And it's pretty interesting. And I think becoming aware of the pattern will help us then to choose how we affect the pattern. But when we're not aware of the pattern, then we don't have the ability to choose because we don't have the awareness to choose from.
That's right. This is where studying history becomes important. You're doing to repeats. So awareness brings a lot of insight of how to proceed forward in simpler manners. One of the first episodes, again, watching your first episode, the answers are typically more simple than we think. And I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but it's mind blowing sometimes how simple the answer is.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to your body and your pain, let's just actually do the practical application. It's more simple than you think. And so right now, I'm going to have you do is touch the spot that's not feeling so good. Before you do, I want you to rate it. 10 is the most intense, or let's do 100 is the most intense, most uncomfortable, the most sensation. 0 means you're feeling great, and there's no issue, and you're ready to flow and go.
Okay.
All right. So just kind of gauge what that is. Take a breath in, be aware of what it is. And you can move your head left and right, kind of get the feeling, or even up and down, because we live in our body. We are spiritual beings. We are, another way of saying it is we are quantum beings. We have a non-physical side of us, and then we have a physical side of us. So be aware of this wonderful land we are living in.
Yeah.
So, Jim, you got a number for that?
Yeah.
Of intensity.
Yeah, I'd say of intensity on a scale of 1 to 100, I call it a 10. It's noticeable, but it doesn't. Maybe a 15, 10 to 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. And the one in my groin, below my groin area, is probably a 10.
So, which one's more intense?
The one in my forehead is a little bit more noticeable than the one in my groin.
All right. So we're going to do one of the first things to do with everybody is I'm going to have you take one hand. This is the one that feels most natural and place it on your forehead. Yeah. Like this right across the front, like sideways. Yep. And now take the other one and place it on your heart. And I want you to imagine your hands are actually touching within your body and breathe in through your nose 5 seconds and breathe out through your mouth for 5 seconds and repeat that a few times and just breathe into the feelings where your hands are touching. And if you feel yourself wanting to shift or just twist or lean, just go towards that a bit. Go into that path of ease. Everyone who's home, I mean, if you're feeling tension in your body, put your hand on the tension, put the other hand on the heart. And you breathe in just manner, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And there's a neurologic brain Western way of understanding what's going on here. And there's also an Eastern way with all kinds of various esoteric names and techniques that allude to this exact same phenomena. But because of the Western studies, we've been able to identify certain things that are very effective. So Jim, why don't you take one more breath in and out and just kind of check in with yourself. Put your hands down. Yeah, check in, move it around and rate it. If it is it, just notice what you notice and let us know what you experienced.
It's coming down in this area, and this feels very open. And it feels like they're connecting in a way.
Okay. So then let's put the other hand, I guess the first hand you had in your heart, now put it on the new spot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then so I guess that your right hand would be on your heart and your left hand would be on the new spot where it came down. I guess that was that over your nose or over your jaw.
Yeah.
So put your other hand on that. Your left hand.
You want me to put my like this again or like this?
Yeah, just down further where the energy moved to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it right there. And we're going to follow it. So breathe in and out. And then let your body just fall as it wants to go. And just go into the feeling. It's almost as if you're going to go inward and breathe to the most core intense spot. And after 3 or 4 breaths, just go ahead and put your hands down and check in with yourself.
And while you're doing this with Jim, I want to ask a question about
Please.
If someone is hoping to heal themselves from something, would you suggest that if they know where that thing is or anywhere that they have that feeling, that they can start doing that as a consistent practice, repeating numerous times a day, every day, thinking about healing said dis-ease in the system?
Yes, and yes. So what I just demonstrated with Jim is actually stacking 3 methods.
Stacking functions, as we say in permaculture.
Yeah, you guys really laid it out in that statement. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. So in essence, putting the hand on the forehead comes from something called neuro-emotional technique. It's East meets West. It's mostly taught at Jefferson University in the medical community. It's at Jefferson University in Philadelphia, though it was established through the chiropractic profession and kinesiology for the last 35 years. They've published over 40 research articles now. They have all kinds of wonderful data, the receipts, so to speak, for anyone who wants to dig in, regardless of specialty. They have done their homework. For the research part of that, the website is onefoundation.org or .com. Excuse me on that one.
I always get those two messed up too, but people can try both.
It's onefoundation.com, I'm pretty sure. but it's an organization. So .org sounds right, though. I'll pull it up here in a second.
I can do it. You can keep talking.
Thank you. Though, so with that being said, the leaning component, the path of ease, I hear you guys talk about disease. Ease is what nature does. Ease is a gift that we are inherently given. It's a right. And the veil of the twist of the world, so to speak, gets us out of ease, a dis-ease state. So when there's expression of lack of ease or lack of flow, if I could kind of get eloquent with that language for a moment, there is a dis-ease state. And we have all these names for these symptoms. And yet the body is telling you what to do. It's saying, I need some attention. And maybe you don't have the skills around you to get that attention. And so this brings me to like this education system and the food system that is like, what do people need and what is it to be human? And then in the sense of getting themselves well in the moment here now, today, 2023, is okay, what can I do? So getting your mind and your emotional state in harmony. People call it the heart rate variability or coherence. If anyone's familiar with the Heart Math Institute, they've done all this kind of wonderful research about when you breathe. That's why all the breath work is popular all of a sudden. All the meditation and all the mindfulness and all the yoga and all these wonderful. Bring your body to stillness. Bring it to harmony. Bring it to rejuvenation time, relaxation time. That's called, in the nervous system language, parasympathetic. Everyone's heard of the stress response, but no one talks about the relaxation response. So this activates a relaxation response. When we put our hands and our heart together, it's basically going brain and mind, different things. Brain and mind talk to the heart. Heart talk to the brain and the mind. And the leaning component is the body's natural physical response to some level of interference between the heart and the brain at the spinal, disc, ligament, muscular levels. That's a lot right there. Let me pause.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a simple phrase: structure equals function. As the twig is bent, so grows the tree.
Yeah. And function before equals form, right? Or
function equals form.
Yeah.
So Jim, in electricity and electromagnetics, when there's more resistance, there's more heat, more feeling.
Wow.
So there's some resistance in this pole right here and the pole between the legs.
Yeah.
So whatever
I love the emotional guidance system.
Amen. That is a perfect analogy. Yeah. I heard you say that episode 1. I was like, you guys nailed it. And that it's because it's a universal truth.
Yeah. Frick. This is Dr. Kevin. So, we got so into it. This is so beautiful, and we'll keep going. But who are you? Where did you come from? And how did you get so excited to be who you are?
Wow. So I grew up in southern New Jersey in the Wharton State Forest area on the edge of it, and just surrounded by nature. Everyone had multiple acres, lots of farms, horses, and sod and corn and cranberries. Blueberries are kind of specialty of the area. It's absolutely beautiful. And I fell in love with the history of it early on.
What did you say the other day when we spoke, sort of cut in there, about that forest? And there's something about it that it's the last or the largest in the United States.
It's got one of the largest natural aquifers below the land. It's the largest. It's one of the largest eastern parks. I think it's over 1 million acres here in New Jersey. Now, believe that New Jersey's got a 1 million acre park.
Yeah, wow.
And there's another one. It's kind of interesting. If you could picture the map of where New York City is and where Philadelphia is, there's a big highway, I-95 and the cities and the suburban sprawl. But oppositely, here is the hugest nature reserves and the Garden State part.
Wow.
New Jersey's the Garden State, if for us that remember our state sayings and things like that. So it's interesting. And so where I grew up, I had lots of dreams real young, lots and lots of dreams. And I had a lot of dreams about Native Americans, and specifically, I always was in my dream this Native American boy on a deer hunt. Always. Wow. So eerie, so interesting, but I just went with it. I liked it. Yeah. And right around where I live, there's a lot of history of prior to, of course, the European movement over here. There was large Native American populations. The Delaware, I believe the lead nation name is the Lenape or Lenape. I've recently learned, and they have many different different subgroups within that group, and all the high schools I went to are named one of these subgroups. So interesting, from Maryland all the way up to the northeast, and so nonetheless, there's a lot of history of Native American bathing areas, and there's some very historical sites related to it. And when the Westerners moved in, there was a movement of herbalism, and there's this wonderful history by natural teachers in the area that pass on the lineage of the famous herbalist of the time from the 1850s on. His name's this is a black man that lived in the southern parts of the New Jersey state, and was one of the best and became one of the most well-known healers of the Philadelphia region down to Atlantic City and Cape May. And they did it on a wagon with a horse, and just really interesting stories of the time and the tribulations and the difficulties, what it was to be alive. I can't imagine what it was like to have life at 1850s and things like that, but to use nature around, and methods that were developed in Europe and American Indian methods that were known to the tribes people to help people with bacteria and funguses and infections and coughs and just the funguses and infections and bacteria and viruses of life, from poor conditions or very difficult times and stresses.
Poor sanitation.
Sanitation is like the thing that cleaned everything up and made us have the ability to live so long and be so well off in many, many ways.
And I've also heard stories that with the indigenous, they didn't have any problems with any of that.
No.
Like they lived in pure abundance and community and balance in every way. They would plant food. They would go to certain places at certain times of year because they knew there was going to be a massive abundance of things to eat there that they might have planted the year before. And they didn't have any sanitation issues or any of that stuff.
Well, they understood there's a rhythm and a cycle of life.
Yeah.
And just like we rotate our chickens, depending on what kind of farm style that you do, you rotate your chickens because you don't want them to keep pooping in the same spot, and nothing's going to grow after a while. But if you do it right, it's going to be super good fertilizer, super good soil. So they rotated it, they migrated, I'm sure, I don't know all the history of this by any means, but I'm sure they planted and moved and planted and moved. Yep. And there was things just growing abundantly naturally. And
they had gardens of Eden. They had massive excess food. And then the United States military was ordered to destroy their food supply.
So that's, this is the nature of, you mentioned the names and words have meaning and power, and what are these things? And I feel that the veil is coming off in such a way that people can, as Jim, you guys, I've heard you say it somewhere, people are knowing it, maybe not acting on it, but people are seeing it everywhere. Yeah. And the truth is coming through, and it's inconvenient, it's uncomfortable, and yet it reveals a deeper truth if we can zoom out of the stress of it. And that is one of the biggest games I've been learning is we all have these many levels of programs, from very simple ones to spot to very deeply multiple and generational ingrained ones. That as they start to bubble out and more people talk about them, some of these moments are like edge of the cliff, psychological breakdown moments of what is going on in this world. And in that light of helping my clients and helping myself, I got to all these really interesting knowledge and techniques because of my story of multiple concussions before sports, during sports, after sports. And that's the nature of the condition of the brain and the mind. And what also got me really interested was my family suffered from Parkinson's and Alzheimer's stuff. And I saw my older generations really suffer. And many people in my world, there's more percentages that are happening. and it's related to the toxins and the metals in our food industry and the practices that could be eliminated with food forests. And this was got me going about food forest many years ago, but not knowing it was called that, and not knowing that you guys even existed, though other groups were talking about it. And it's a inherent truth from the holistic healing community. And we knew that farms are where the freedom comes with healthcare, and so much comes from that.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
I always talk food as medicine, but one of your fellow mates told me that food is money. And I was like, oh, that blew my mind, because it's real power. It's real wealth. When you can walk out and just pick it and you're there, there's no concern for that.
Yeah. Whoever said money doesn't grow on trees doesn't have any of the trees that I have. Wealth grows on trees.
Well, there's that mystical lore that's been sprinkled over society for a number of generations.
Yep. Yeah, there's the lie.
There's the lie.
Right? There's the lie. I love, and I'm just going to say this again, I've said it a bunch of times over the past week, since Jim and I interviewed Rob Avis from Verge Permaculture, and he talked about he gave such a great analogy of what our current growing systems are and what we're moving towards. And he used the analogy of a child and an adult, and that our traditional mentality annual backyard garden, which requires so much care and input and time and effort. And same with that larger industrial scale monoculture farm, takes so much of that time, care, effort, etc., just like a child does. And what we're actually now moving towards, leveraging permaculture and creating these structured food forests, very thoughtfully designed, that become mature and don't need the care, don't need the constant inputs and whatnot to sustain themselves. They self-regulate. They establish, is it homeostasis? Is that the term I'm thinking about back from science class?
Balance.
They achieve the balance.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is trying to remove that old paradigm and show people the new possibility of working with nature and letting nature do what it's supposed to do, and we just be the stewards of it. And that food production system that will produce there is the adult that will care for itself. Yeah. Wow, what a simple way to look at it, and so accurate.
Yeah. I hear, in that story, I hear that this idea that, humans could make nature better. We made a huge attempt over, how many years, I don't know, but now we're recognizing nature had it right the whole time. How we honor that teacher and incorporate our understanding of how to maximize yields and stack resources and systems, though, and do it in such a way that nature is our grandest teacher. Mm-hmm. And nature responds to the environment. It's the ecosystem. It's the in medical terminology, it's epigenetics. It's the factors that affect the genes, and the genes have a standard pattern, but it is editable. It is learnable. It's trainable. It can turn on and off based on different factors. We are responding to our environment just like plants respond to the change of the length of the sun in the sky. It's time. Yet there's also grander scales. Jim, you mentioned 10-year cycles. Well, that perfectly explains something else that goes into the stars. Genesis 1:14, the stars are for signs and for seasons. So there's not just a literal clock it's a literal clock in the sky that we use to build our calendars and times, but we know that system's been changed up a bit.
Yeah.
And we also recognize
13 months, with April Fool's Day being the first day of the year.
Well, but and at the same time, I want to not diverge too much. Though in numerology, the Fool is represented by the 0, and 0 is the feminine number. It represents infinite. It represents boundaries. It represents a portal. It represents numerous factors, gateways, boundaries, but it also represents where we have the wrong boundaries too. Mm-hmm. And so the Fool, when it comes to a kingdom and a king and a queen, the Fool is the only one who can make fun of the king and the queen.
Yeah.
The Fool goes about happily, jovially, making mistakes, yet somehow pulls it out.
Yeah.
It's all about testing and boundaries, pruning and growing and nurturing. So think about the feminine, the womanly, motherly energy. It's nurturing. There's all this literal and metaphysical. There's a spiritual component and a physical component. There's a quantum and a Newtonian, a yin and a yang.
Yeah.
It's the computer. It's the, God forbid I say, it's the Matrix movie, the zeros and ones.
Yeah.
That's all how this electronics works in our human body.
Yeah.
It's on or it's off. It's functioning or it's not. It's in order or it's not. And so that's all the game I play is, yes, I've learned a lot of things, but I'm following the inherent wisdom within has a guidance system that can be detected by a professional.
Yeah.
And a circle of professionals. I stand on the shoulders of giants. My goodness gracious.
Yeah.
However, I'm dedicated to my art.
Yeah.
I almost said craft.
I love that. It's amazing what the words do. The word
indeed.
magic.
Well, there is magic in it because this is a magical realm in some respects. At the same time, there's certain laws that apply, and when we inherently run up against the edges of those laws or unknowingly go beyond the desired outcome of a violation of that law, well, there's effects that occur in the moment and then down the road, and depending on what that timing of that is and the nature of it, well, you may have some repeatability coming back on you, or ascending or descending. Yet there's this perfection in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, Jim, our bodies are this grand dance between all these multiple systems, and it is to be we are mammal. I mean, what are we classified as? Mammals. Mm-hmm. So we are part of this system, and what we put in, it plays out.
Yeah.
So that's why food is really the root of all healing. It's the root of all family and community. I mean, my God, the summer picnic where everyone brings the potluck dish, and when it's around people that love and value the same kind of foods I love and value, it's next level.
Yeah.
Oh
man, I feel great right now. I am aware of those areas, but there's something that's shifted in there. I feel very present and thankful.
And really, if we spent the time and did a little more one-on-one, I know there'd be all this revelation and deeper shifting from physical stuff like bones aligning to a shift of an aha moment, extracting the wisdom from why the tension's there in the first place.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And so all this stuff, from like learning my medical stuff and all these techniques, it's founded because of nature. It's the laws of nature. And we repeat these laws in our political system. We repeat these laws. It happens in our physical body. It happens in anyone who does business, who tries to grow a business. These laws are just there. It's our lack of awareness or lack of an understanding. And just like when someone gets pulled over, officer, I didn't know I was going 25 miles an hour over. Well, ignorance doesn't excuse you.
Yeah. Yes. For fun, I'm taking the speedometer off of my motorcycle because I want to be present. And I've noticed that I'm always looking at my speedometer. And that is actually taking presence from my driving ability. Taking the speedometer off, and I'm going to go what feels right and do no harm. And if the officer ever tries, and this just happened the other day, pulled me over, and I said, I am not in compliance with your system. I'm outside of your system. Am I your slave? Then you have no right to use any force and violence against me. And I will ask them that directly. Are you going to use force and violence against me if I don't sign that piece of paper? And they have to answer it one way or another.
Well, you prepared yourself.
Autograph.
Yeah.
Right. So you autograph and that you're traveling. I think that's the real important statement, is because if you're using that roadway to do commerce, which is how they've got us programmed to believe that we're using it, then we fall under their jurisdiction. But if you're traveling, you're not. You're personally, right? Me as a human man, Jim Gale, traveling. Back up.
Yep.
Right. Well, all this stuff comes from this conversation that you're having is how to delineate yourself the jurisdiction between
Yeah.
corporate law, statute law, and the common law and the ecclesiastical law.
Yeah.
And when you recognize that you are endowed with the spirit of your creator, you are made in that image. It's pulsing through your blood. It's in who you, the makeup of what you are. Then it's repositioning yourself from being someone that's afraid and someone that is trying to learn
A child.
behave in the way that you need to be managed. Yes, a child. They treat you as in that child state because legally you've acquiesced to maintain that state and because you're ignorant or ignorant of the law, that of the levels of jurisdiction, then when you can claim yourself as one of those people and then have the language that goes with that, speak as a king, as Pontius Pilate reflected upon Jesus's words, speak as a king because he came from a kingdom. He operated as a diplomat here. He knew the law better than anyone. He lived the law. He was the living law. Yeah. And so that was a beautiful example that we get to reflect upon both literally and metaphorically what that represents. I had come to learn that Romans called the Christians. The ones that were called Christians called themselves the way. And so that meant they were living a way of life that was different than the people of the time, typically. Yeah. So they called them Christ and IANS. That's like a state of being. That's kind of like they're living Christ way. And it gets all into the interesting conversation of, well, how does that play out with Reiki and energy work and yoga and all this? And well, it's crystal. He crystallized the law. He embodied the law. And crystal has all these wonderful energy vibrational patterns that the people of the gem world and the stone world and the energy healing community, they love them because there's an effect on the body and they can sense it. They're the human spectrum of class that can feel it. And so now there's all kinds of wonderful technology to take the advantage of crystals and light and laser and for healing tissue. It's beautiful.
We love playing with those edges. Analemma Water comes to mind, and Dolph and the creators of this. And I have always been very skeptical about claims. We've been marketed to for so long by so many people who simply want to take our energy and our money that I'm very skeptical. So the fact that these analemma systems, these wands and these systems create coherent structured water, somehow adding spectrums of light, of frequency into the water. And then this is where it gets really exciting for me, is they've proven it. It's no longer a claim, it's a proof. They've done it at a dozen different colleges and universities, showing the effects of this water compared to the normal water. And this water grows food much more prolifically, increases microbiome in the gut by 38% in one duplicatable study through a dozen colleges and universities. So I wasn't a big believer in crystals or any of that stuff until lately. And now I see there's something in all of it.
Well, so there's the conversation in the metaphysical community, the natural healing community. There's a lot of mysticism and there's a lot of false claims. Yeah. There really is. Yeah. And it's because sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. Sometimes it's the application of the individual doing it. Sometimes it's the application of the timing of what's required to actually get the result needed. And that's different. And so where East meets West, what is beautiful is certain systems, certain technologies, certain techniques just rise to the top automatically.
Yeah.
And it takes some time, though. As they say, the fruit, what is it? You can judge
by the tree by its fruit. Labor, yes.
You judge the tree by its fruit.
By their deeds, you shall know them. Yeah. Is another one that I like.
By the deeds, you shall know them. That's right.
And then, so something's coming to mind that's really profound for me is kinesiology. This is another one. It's like a crystal. It depends on, and then David Hawkins, actually, Power versus Force, who is one of my favorite authors of all time. He said at one point, he said, I kind of wish I would have never brought up kinesiology the way I did, because so many people have taken advantage of this art. And if they're not of that level of consciousness, then it becomes snake oil and it becomes another scam. And so
it is, and it has, and it definitely is. So that being said, the biggest aha for everyone right now is to understand there's different kinds of kinesiology.
Yeah.
There's clinically verified style kinesiology. You can look this up in journals, and there's a method to do it appropriately. And yes, there is an art, but there's a method to get a clinically verifiable neurologic test.
Awesome.
And then there's the one and the kind that's 50-50 at best.
Yeah.
Frankly, most people, including myself in the beginning, was doing the 50-50 kind.
Yeah.
And then there's orthopedic testing, which tests something similar, but it's about the integrity of the muscle. So there's 3 kinds of kinesiology muscle testing.
Wow.
There's the one that they use in most PT clinics and in hospital settings. That's the orthopedic muscle testing. And then we have in the clinical literature and the neurologic world is this neurologic muscle testing. Most of the work that I am familiar with is done through these one group of doctors, and that's called neuro-emotional technique. And much of that work has been verified now at Jefferson University and a few others. And they've launched a whole new branch of their education of the college called the Integrative Branch of Medicine. And
that's fantastic, man.
And it's basically saying, and I'm gonna really paraphrase, is East meets West. The Eastern has too much evidence, too much. It's called case study, and now they've done many groups have done clinical controlled double-blind studies, and then with the Western science started really getting into where it all comes together is a body of knowledge called psychosomatoneroimmunology. A book for everyone to get is called Molecules of Emotion.
Yeah.
Dr. Candace Pert. And you start to stack concepts from these doctors that did things in the 70s, and they stack things that happened in the 20s and the 30s, and those guys stack things that happened in the 1880s and 1890s. And you start to see this evolution of, well, we're not just chemistry. We're not just pharmaceutical. There's so much other things going on. And so that big, long medical term I use is basically saying everything works together. Mind, body, being. Mind, body, being. There's a world of energy around us they call the biofield. And it connects through the fascia and the myofascia and the meridian system to the nervous system. So it's an outside in and an inside out.
Okay, so
sorry,
my wife and I were laying in bed yesterday meditating and just sitting there quietly breathing and talking a little bit. And I'm saying, babe, she's like, do you feel that? And she said the same thing. I don't even know if she said it first or I said it first, but it's way more intense right now.
It's heightened right now. It's heightened. So there's a couple words I'm going to throw out there. One is resonance. You feel the vibe. Mother's intuition.
Yeah.
You know, but before days of cell phones, I had a couple experiences where I'd pick up the phone, the landline hanging on the wall, click, pull it up, put it in my ear, and the person I'm about to call is on the line already.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've all had it.
Yes.
How interesting is that?
It's amazing.
So if you've ever been to a concert and everyone's dancing to the same tune, loving the band, we're all entanglement.
Yeah. Quantum entanglement to the max.
Quantum entanglement. And so we have these entanglements, we have these connections, for saying it simply. We have these connections at these levels we don't know, but we feel.
Yeah.
The hidden language, so to speak, in this ethernet, ether world. Excuse me, couldn't help myself.
Something else that was relevant to that is we were in the house here, and then we also have the place at God's Landing, and it was so freaking intense. I could feel it in my toes, my hands, everywhere in my body. I could feel this intense frequency, and it was almost at the edge of comfort in a way, but I really understand the value of feeling it. So I was loving it. And at the same time, I was questioning, is there an EMF in here? Is there something
That's
in
what I was just
here?
thinking. Is that did they just turn the 5G on around you?
That's exactly my thought. So then the next day I said, babe, I'm going to check this out at Galt's tomorrow, which is pretty free, relatively speaking, free of EMFs. And at Galt's, I did a meditation and I felt almost the exact same thing. I called her up. I said, babe, good news. I feel the same thing here. So it's not that they just have the smart meter blasting the shit out of us, which of course is a bad deal. I've heard from so many people. I verified that all over. Anyway,
Yes.
any thoughts on that, Dr. Kevin?
100%. So let's talk about the main topic, like 101, cosmology 101, cosmology neurology. Okay. Just like the planetary effects on the plants with the moon and the sun cycles, there's bigger cycles that are influenced by Mercury and Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars. They all have their unique signatures and their unique influences.
Yeah.
And when they do different things in the sky, like hands on a clock, there's something going on physically, electromagnetically. And this is where all these interesting things from bioluminescent things in our ocean and our waters to the aurora borealis and the cycles of where animals migrate and growing seasons, and some seasons are dry, some seasons are abundant. And biblically, there's a story of the dream interpretation. And in this, I'm going to give a very brief snippet of 7 years of feast and 7 years of famine. Jim, you talked about a cycle of 10 years of something and 10 years of something else.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about planetary hands on a clock.
Yeah.
Cycles of 20 years, cycles of 28 days, the moon, cycles of 365 days. Yet other cultures have other time systems. So the most important ones that I think are most relevant in our collective awareness is when, if you remember 2012, the Mayan calendar, the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, their system's clock just started a new cycle. It's like 12, 12, 12, 12. Everything's like at the, at north, so to speak. It wasn't like that exactly in the sense of wherever it was pointing, but the sense of like a fresh start. And then off to the races. And this cycle, though, is apparently somewhere between 24 and 26,000 years for the full year, the full cycle of the full clock to complete. And this clock doesn't have a second. It has a second hand, a minute hand, and an hour hand, but it has a day hand, a week hand, a month hand, a year hand, a decade hand. Think all these different layers of how we look at time, but they had different things based on the movement of the planets and certain patterns of stars, what we call constellations. Yeah. So they were energetic clock hands, and they began to notice over a collective period of time cycles of feast and famine, cycles of war and peace, cycles of different things. Yeah. And when just like stock market, just like fashions, those that feel that they're in control are trying to imitate truth. So they play their systems on the truth to help us begin the slow separation over time from the truth. Yeah. And then, but at some point it gets too far and we start to all wake up, and now we're saying no collectively and doing the things that need to be done that we have forgot to do, that we forgot the value of how important it is to get it done.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating when I think about that sky clock and the creation of like the Mayan calendar, and like who is the person that sat up all night, every night watching, and then where are they documenting this thing? Because no, they're not filming it, right? And where are they documenting it? How are they mapping it? Are they drawing a new map every single night? I don't know.
You remember
incredibly complex.
What's the movie where the guy's Tom what's his name? He's stranded on the island. He's got his volleyball friend Wilson and
Hanks.
Alone or something.
It's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks. And he's stranded on an island, and the sun is shining. He finds a cave finally somewhere in the middle of the movie, and he notices this crack of light coming through. And there's a couple scenes, but doesn't figure it out. But he recognizes the sun goes over a period of time. He starts marking where the sun is on the rock, and it goes over in a figure eight pattern. Wow. So just like if you put a post in the ground, you can see the sun's shadow. There's certain periods and certain times where the shadow is predictable, and it changes year by year. And so they started there's all this lore of and history of how time started and how they started to track time and using the shadows and using the stars. It's, if one were to investigate the Tahitians and how they navigated paddling over the water, great thousands of miles of distances just on like an 8-person boat and some stars. And the Vikings are navigating beyond their normal waters. And so there's systems that we have, and nature has them wired in the electromagnetic world. They have this beacon, and humans have it too. Some people can fully determine what direction they're facing.
Yeah.
And there's a known neurons that are associated with that. It's just really intriguing. We are nature and nature is us, and we see nature all playing out around us, and we have those capabilities, but in different ways.
Yeah.
And we're just not tapping into them on purpose.
Well, we've been polluted to death, so we can't tap into them.
Yeah, and it's not being taught to the young, right? It's not as soon as you're born, start working on some of these things, or a plan to start working on those things as a child grows. We just don't tap into any of those feelings anymore.
About 15 years ago, I was part of an organization called Birthworks International, and it was teaching people how the ancient cultures gave birth.
Yeah,
and I mean, from the moment we're in it, I mean, my God, the movies about the fear of birth and what it looks like and the screaming and the pain and the pictures they're putting in people's minds. So now that's the framework we're all working on.
Wow.
And then they add the mainstream system. They have women on their back, their heels are up, and that's not a natural position. Gravity's not an advantage there. So there's all this other fear and energy component going in. And now we're nutrient deficient, and we got more toxins than ever in the bloodstream. And so it's as if we're being held back from our real full capabilities. And my goodness, if we were really expressing our full capabilities, those that are really pulling the puppet strings, I feel they're really fragile.
Mm-hmm.
They are trying everything to prevent themselves from being exposed. Yet there's nothing else can happen but that. And that's what nature does with everything that's man-made structure. It just comes through and overwhelms and inhabits.
It's fascinating that you brought up birth, and we've had this topic so far today about word magic. I'm listening to a book called Word Magic, and it's I'll put it up here, by a man named Pao Chang. You can find it on YouTube. And one of the things he talks about is how admiralty and merchant law is always the law of the sea, and how the bringing a baby into the world has been corrupted, and why we have the birth certificate and all of the stuff around it and the language around it. So the birth is very similar to birthing at a dock, right?
That's right.
Birth canal. Oh, canal, that's a water thing. Oh, a vessel. Oh, they're able to label the mom as a vessel delivering or birthing a baby through the birth canal. And then you have the doctor. And then the doctor fills out the manifest or the certificate, right? And we consent unknowingly into this whole admiralty at sea system. And the words, if you actually understood them, it's so obvious. But like, we have zero exposure to any of these words and really understanding the meaning and how it all is functioning together and the law that we are operating under, etc. It's, again, just so mind-blowing as you start to open your mind to this stuff and get into it. And Jim mentions it a lot, govern mente, right? To control the mind control. It's wow.
Earlier we mentioned the way, right? So then the question that pops into my mind and started popping in about 15 years ago is, what is the way? Well, the way for Jesus and the way for Buddha to attain enlightenment or a mind free of governmente were the same way. It was meditation. It was relaxing the mind, allowing the mind to the programs and the chatter to stop and just to be purely present. Eckhart Tolle talks about the same thing. Presence, the power of now. That's the way. I know it, actually. It's the past being a belief system.
I heard recently someone talked about apartments, and she said, think about it for a second. Apartment. meant. And of course, the word meant has been very, I dove into that a long time ago. And that's, of course, the mind. But it's simple. It's right in front of our faces, apartment. They're creating a culture of separating of minds. And when there's a collection of mind, when two gather in thy name, there I am. Synergized. This is an inspirational story for me. It's all always in nature that's inspiring. It's the strongest horse know the man, the Belgian draft horse. And the story goes when one horse is pulling something, pull 8,000 pounds. When there's two horses, the average person goes, okay, it's 16,000, but no, there's a tripling effect, 24,000 pounds. Yet when there's a meeting of the minds, and this is a term, but that means they know each other, they like each other, they're trained together, they eat together, they like each other. There's a quadrupling effect of their ability to pull something. And so when we are on the same page, when we're on the same way, we've done the communication, we've figured it out, we've even done the awkward stuff, whatever that may be. We figured out agreement. And so that brings this congruency of the mind. And when there's congruency, there's peace. And so this apartment is creating this culture of separation. And that's everything from what I've learned the healthcare system does in our world, the medical system. It separates us from ourselves through synthetic medications. And yet nature always has this symbiotic, synergistic, everything's, when it grows naturally is perfect balance. Even if it's on its way out, it has a balance point somewhere. It's so beautiful, and everything's 100% sustainable. And we are that too. Yet when our mind is swayed, our body gets swayed, and our life gets swayed. It's this distortion from truth.
It sure is. Wow. This is so freaking awesome, Dr. Kevin. I'm very, very glad we're connected, and we've got to run here pretty soon. I've got to actually go to Minnesota. I don't got to. I want to. I'm so excited to go to Minnesota. Yeah. And my family's going, and my daughter's going to be there for the first time, my 3-year-old. And we're going to hopefully see some snow. There she is right there.
Oh, yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. And then we're going to help organize so my mom can move full time into the food forest, into the paradise.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to be working with you about the healing modalities and the practices. And I love stacking functions. So having a food forest and eating healthy and having joy, and then having your wisdom and the wisdom of these other people that have demonstrated the ability to help somebody free themselves of dis-ease. And I couldn't be more thankful, buddy. I'm so glad that we are doing what we're doing together.
Yeah, it is. And simply, the answer's within, just like nature, the answer's within itself. And so the answer's within yourself. It's just learning what those tools are and how to navigate that and operate that. And then that's all the techniques, and that's all the, all the receipts of degrees and everything. That just means I did enough work to know certain things, and everyone here can do that. Yeah. It's what I chose my focus on, and I found nature within nature, and the healing comes within me, and it comes from the example of nature. So thank you, Jim. Yeah. Thank you, Matthew, for everything. This has been just a lot of fun, and hopefully we can get our mind wrapped around some of those ideas.
I think a very profound episode that was going to be mind-blowing and extremely impactful for a lot of people. You added a lot of value today for the audience, and I know that I took a ton away from it. Loved it. Loved listening to you. So, extremely grateful that you were excited to join us on the show today.
Well, part of my mission is to share the word, because I've healed, like I said, lots of concussions. So I have a television show I'm going to invite you guys on to join. It's called Unwinding Stress. I interview holistic professionals, go over techniques and technologies, tools for everyone to better themselves, empower themselves at home. And that's, as a gift, I love to share. And I have all kinds of resources and of course, products and services that I use, but I want to grow to the world. And because I see a path that has been hidden. And it's right there. It's right there for everyone. It's just, most of it's within. It's really cool.
Is there a web link I can share?
Well, most of it is right there. You already got it. And if you go to the top, the WordPress sites, it's got the about page, and you'll see watch the Unwinding Stress show. It's right at the top. Okay. You'll see the shop section. You'll see the make appointment section. It's just an application to connect with me. And then from there, I help navigate people and point them in the right directions, or products or shows or free resources and things like that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Thank you, brother. Big
Thank
hug.
you.
Have
Oh,
a great
big
day,
hug.
everybody. If you've got value from this, please share it. And a lot of people ask us, how can we support your mission? The best way anybody can support our mission is by allowing us to help you be free, to help you grow food. Everything starts with design. Design your land to be hyper abundant and productive. That's how you can help yourself, you can help us, and you can help the world.
Yeah, let us help you design an adult food production system.
Yeah.
It's the way I see.
Yep.
Man.
It's the way. All right. Love you, everybody. Ciao.
Thanks so much for joining us today, everybody. Dr.
Thank
Kevin, thank you again. You guys are welcome to hop off. I'll play a couple ads and we'll wrap up.
Yeah. All right. Thank
All
you,
right,
everybody.
Thank you so much, Ben. Have an awesome day, okay?
Yes, sir. You too, same.
All right. Cheers.
At Weston A. Price Foundation, we're dedicated to restoring nutrient-dense, farm-fresh foods to the human diet. We look to ancient food and health practices for clues on how to live our healthiest, most vibrant lives today. Join the mission and check out our exclusive membership details at westonaprice.org. As a member, you'll receive our quarterly journal on wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts, our annual shopping guide, monthly access to private Q&A sessions with experts, consultations on state laws, regulations, and policies, including food freedom legislation, and so much more. Weston A. Price Foundation. Let's return to wise, traditional foods.
Hey, Jim Gale Show listeners. Again, thank you for tuning in. We love having you here. We're so honored. And, I want to give you a little bit of exciting news. We've decided to offer complimentary food forest strategy sessions with a certified permaculture designer. These are 30-minute sessions where you get to sit down with someone who can really help you with a strategy for your own property. It's a great chance for you to ask some questions and learn and just really to dig into what's possible. This is 30 minutes with someone who's certified, knows all about permaculture and what's possible using this incredible science and working with nature. So head over to foodforestabundance.com and schedule your 30-minute food forest strategy session today. All right. Thank you again for joining us. We hope you found today's episode valuable, just like we did. I love that conversation. And we look forward to seeing you again real soon. We actually have another show coming up this afternoon, 3:30 Eastern. We'll be meeting with Jamie Friesen from Living the Off-Grid Dream. And in the past couple years, Jamie and his brother Shelby have actually already helped, I think, around 7,000 people learn about building their own off-grid paradise, completely self-sufficient, through their course. So it's going to be a cool episode. So thanks for tuning in. Wishing you an amazing day. The show is officially over.